and welcome here to Talk FCB and welcome back here to the channel, guys, for another video. And today we are talking transfers, and in particular we are going to be discussing the midfielder from Brazil who is getting a lot of headlines right now and has been pictured in a Barcelona shirt. It is Gremio's Arthur Melo, and we are going to be taking a look at him in a lot more detail today and looking at whether we really should be trying to spend around 50 million euros to get his signature. And that is basically the headline right now. Arthur plays for Gremio in Brazil, 21 years old, and he apparently is the midfielder that we have been looking for a long time. He is a controlling midfielder. He is somebody who plays in the midfield to dictate the tempo. He's very comfortable on the ball, and could he be the man that we've been craving for several years now? Since Xavi Hernandez has left the club, we've struggled to replicate that kind of control in midfield. We've been looking for the right profile, and could this man from Brazil be the answer to all of our problems? And obviously right now the answer to that question is unclear, but we are going to be taking a look at Arthur in a lot more detail, what he can bring to the team, what he's done in his career so far. And like I say, he is 21 years old. He turned 21 in August, so he's still quite a young player, still making his name on the world stage. He is Brazilian. He currently plays first division side Gremio. He does play in centre midfield. He's 5'8" tall, and he does currently have a release clause in his contract at Gremio for 50 million euros. A bit of background information on Arthur Melo. He came through the Gremio Youth Academy. He joined there when he was 14 years old. He's been there for a lot of his life. He made his first team debut back in 2015, and since then he has made 40 appearances for the club. He's also made 20 appearances for the Brazil underage teams. He still has not been capped for the first team, but a lot of people in Brazil and a lot of football experts in Brazil do believe that he could well be the future of the national team in that midfield role. And he really has been in excellent form so far this season, and he really came to light in the Copa Libertadores, and Gremio recently played the final and won in the final against Lanús. They were crowned champions at the end of November, and in that game, that's when Arthur really did take off. He was named player of the match. He was instrumental in that final for Gremio, and he actually had to come off injured because apparently the only way that Lanús could deal with him was by chopping him down, injuring him in the process, and finally he went off and he couldn't dominate the midfield anymore. But he was named player of the final. He was one of the best players of the tournament as a whole, and he really has been in good form this season for Gremio in the Brazilian First Division. He was actually given an award very recently for the Breakthrough Player of the Year in the Brazilian First Division. He's made 27 appearances, and I just want to highlight here some very interesting stats from his season at Gremio. He's completed in his time this season in those 27 appearances 2,002 passes. He averages just over 82 passes per game, and overall he has a 93% pass accuracy, which is incredibly high for somebody who completes a lot of passes per game. That is an excellent success rate in the league. And also as well, he's had a different sort of dimension to his game. He does play in that midfield role. He predominantly relies on going forward, controlling in midfield, but he can do some defensive work as well. He's made 50 successful tackles in the league, as well as 29 interceptions, and he has weighed in with 22 key passes. So like I say, people in Brazil, people close to Gremio, I don't claim to watch him every week, but those who do really do rate him very highly. He's been somebody now who's been sort of an emerging star for a few years or so. Ever since he broke through at Gremio, he's slowly made his name, and like I say, this season, both in the league and also in the Copa Libertadores, has really shone through and has been labelled one of those big talents coming out of Brazil. But if we just look now a bit more at his type of profile, what type of player he is, it's very interesting because Arthur Melo's idol reportedly is Andres Iniesta, but he's actually more of the Xavi type profile, which is really important for us, because like I say, we've been searching for that player who can come into our midfield and give us that element of control that we have been missing since Xavi left the club. And watching Arthur, and it's very interesting to say this, but watching him, aspects of his game really do show a bit of Xavi in them. There's a few times, if you watch clips of him when he's getting himself on the ball, you know that Xavi used to receive the ball sometimes and there wouldn't be a pass on, and he would do these swivels on the ball, he would do these pirouettes as he waited for the perfect pass. Arthur Melo does exactly those same things. He has the same characteristics in the way that he waits for the perfect ball. He's happy to bide his time, he's calm on the ball, he doesn't rush things, he looks for the right pass, he's very comfortable in possession, and that is everything that we're looking for in a midfielder coming into the club. And despite his size, again, very similar to Xavi in terms of his size, in terms of his height, he's not a very big player, he has a low centre of gravity, but he's quite strong despite his size. You know, growing up in Brazil, there's some big challenges that go on in that league every single week. weekend, you've got to be physically strong to compete, and he certainly is in that midfield. And I think watching him, obviously, there's big question marks. He's never proved himself in Europe, of course. It is a high price tag. Should we be looking from within to maybe find this type of player? But watching him in the clips that I've seen of him, in the moments that I've seen him play, he does have a lot of the characteristics that we have been desperately missing so far in our midfield. And what I would say about Europe and not quite proving himself outside of Brazil, that's going to be the case with any player that comes from Brazil as they start their career there. You look at Neymar, started at Santos. There was a lot of question marks whether he could do it in Europe. He came over and he took it by storm. The same could of course be said for Gabriel Jesus, somebody that we were interested in. We didn't take the risk, and now he's looking at an excellent piece of business for Manchester City. It is a high price. 50 million euros is his release clause, and it's expected that Gremio will hold out for that. But at the end of the day, you only do get what you pay for, and at the end of the day as well, you've got to think of the market. The market is inflating all of the time. It is going to cost you to get the very best players, and other clubs no doubt are interested in this guy. So the price tag is somewhat justified. And in terms of looking from within, obviously our first port of call for me should always be looking to La Masia, looking to the underage Barcelona teams, seeing if we can use somebody in that type of team. Of course, we've got players like Carlos Alenia, Oriol Busquets breaking through in the type of midfield players, but I wouldn't say either of those are a controlling type midfielder. Alenia is more of a creative player. Oriol Busquets is somebody who's a bit more deeper in midfield. We need somebody to that right of midfield who's just going to keep things ticking over, and I don't really think we have that in La Masia right now. So if we can go out, look to the future, get somebody who's highly talented, it would be a very, very astute purchase indeed. So obviously, with all that considered, we are interested in Arthur. That has been confirmed within the last 7 days or so. Robert Fernandes, of course, our sporting director, went out to Brazil to scout him a lot more closely. When he did go out to scout Arthur Melo, he did actually meet up with him personally. He met him, he possibly talked over personal terms, maybe seeing if he would be interested in a move, and during that visit, Fernandes presented him with a Barcelona shirt. There was pictures taken with Arthur in this Barcelona shirt, and like anything, it's not very long until those images were leaked to the press. That happened, it was all over the Brazilian newspapers. You of course have seen the photos in the past few days, and since then Arthur has had to give an apology to his club. He's still under contract to Gremio, of course, so he came out and said sorry about that. You know, he didn't want to cause any offence. They just won the Copa Libertadores. He's not going to be able to play in the Club World Cup because of that injury that he sustained in the final. But obviously it does look as though we're very much interested. Robert Fernandes went out there, we were discussing with him, and during that apology from Arthur, he did actually admit that initial talks had taken place with Barcelona representatives, so he has been discussing with Barcelona. Gremio, though, are very, very firm. They basically say the player is under contract, he's got a release clause, we intend on keeping him here. If Barcelona wants him, they're going to have to pay the clause. That's the only way they're going to get him. So it does seem as though 50 million euros is what we're going to have to pay, and they also actually threatened to take us to FIFA because of a possible tapping up saga before. Robert Fernandes meeting him, possibly behind closed doors. He is under a contract. You're not really supposed to go to the player before you go to the club. Gremio obviously very disappointed about that, and they did threaten FIFA action. But it is expected, though, we will go to them, we will speak with them directly, and maybe we will offer the full amount in the transfer, which will be 50 million euros. Arthur basically said that he's still a Gremio player. He is very, very grateful to everything they've done for him since he was 14 years old. He said, when the time comes, I'll discuss my future with them, I'll discuss it with my family, and then I'll make the right decision. So it's going to be really, really interesting in the next few weeks, in the next few months, to see what happens with Arthur. It is expected that possibly it could be as close as January, a potential deal, and if it isn't in January, we will be going all out for him in the summer. But as always, guys, this is Barcelona. This is not a club that is doing things astutely in the transfer market. I would not get your hopes up too soon. I would certainly say this is not a done deal, but a lot of people in Brazil and a lot of newspapers out there believe that a deal is inevitable. They think Barcelona firmly interested. Gremio will obviously sell with a release clause, and possibly even there might be room for negotiation. So obviously, as always, guys, I want to know your thoughts. What do you think about Arthur as a player? What do you think about the profile? I actually think it's quite exciting, not only the type of player, but the profile. You know, it's not always about the quality, it's about bringing in the right players for the right system, and I think that's what we got with Arthur, and that's what's exciting to me, finally seeing that we're pursuing somebody who would fit the system and would fit the type of football that we want to play. So leave your thoughts on Arthur down below, guys. I'll be back, of course, very soon with more videos, but please do let me know what you think on this transfer, because it is going to be a controversial one. It is going to be a lot of money for somebody who obviously hasn't proven himself in Europe, but is he worth the risk? Let me know down below. I will see you soon, but until then, as always, Vesca el Barça. Barça!